Welcome to the Smart Business Revolution.
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 You want a revolution?
You say you want a revolution?
Revolution. The revolution.
It's going on right now.
Welcome to The Revolution, the Smart Business Revolution podcast, where we ask today's most successful entrepreneurs to share the tools and strategies they use to build relationships and connections to grow their revenue. Now, your host for The Revolution, John Corcoran.
All right, welcome everyone. John Corcoran here, sitting in as host. We're going to push this episode out onto two different podcasts. So you might be listening to this on the Smart Business Revolution podcast. You might also be listening to it on the Smart Agency Masterclass podcast. And if you haven't seen any of my past episodes, you can search for my name in your podcast player of choice. And I've interviewed lots of smart agency owners, CEOs, founders, and entrepreneurs ranging from Netflix to Kinko's, YPO, EO, Activation, Blizzard, LendingTree, and many more. And I'm also the co-founder of Rise 25, where we help connect B2B business owners to their ideal prospects. And my guest here today is Bobbie Bailey. She's the owner and president of M Agency, based out of the Pacific Northwest, which helps impactful brands with meaningful marketing. They work with a wide variety of companies, from dental offices to airlines. And we're going to be diving into kind of her story, how they started the agency, how she started the agency, coming from a background in restaurants and Yellow Pages, a stint in Yellow Pages, into the world of digital and all the things that she's learned along the way. And of course, this episode brought to you by Rise 25, where we help B2B businesses to get clients, referrals, and strategic partnerships with Done For You podcasts and content marketing. And you can go to rise25.com to learn more about what we do. All right, Bobbie, pleasure to have you here. And let's start with this story about how persistent you were at 15 years old. Now, at 15 years old, I don't know about you, I was out playing with my friends, but you decided you're going to get a job, and you started calling around to local restaurants until they were willing to give you a job. And finally, I love this, a restaurant finally said, well, in order to get her to stop calling, we're just going to create a hostess job for her. Is that right? Is that what happened?
Yeah, that's what happened. It was a restaurant. I grew up in Auburn, Washington, a restaurant called Vito's, Town and Country at the time. And I had gone through the Yellow Pages, really looking and motivated to get a job at that age, and just kept calling specific businesses that I thought that I would have a shot at. And so, yeah, then I got the job. And to this day, the owners would tell you that story, and they just, it's a one of a kind story for them. So it's kind of a reflection for me.
How many phone calls, to this day, they're still telling the story? Like, how many phone calls did you make?
I mean, they make it sound like I called 100 times. I'm imagining it was probably, I don't know, 15 times. Like it was enough times to make them create a position for me.
Okay. So you're honing your sales chops at a young age, at 15 years old. That's impressive. I love the persistence. I actually worked at restaurants in high school and a bit in college. And I say that everyone should do that, work food service at some point in their life, because you learn so much about human nature and customer service and all that kind of stuff. Do you ever think about that? Like what you learned from working in that restaurant and what you apply to the world of business today?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I agree. In fact, if someone that applies at my business has restaurant experience, I'm actually more hopeful that they might be a good candidate.
Yeah.
But I think a couple takeaways from working at restaurants, and this wasn't the only restaurant, because sometimes I would work multiple jobs at one time. I think you really learn how to read people and just help adjust to support people where they're at. Along with, I feel like there's a really good level of responsibility in memorizing that you become very capable of after waiting tables. So, yeah.
Yeah. You're constantly walking around. You've got your, 5 to 10 tables, however many it is. And you're walking up and down and thinking like, oh, ketchup for this table, Diet Coke for this table, fork for this table, a couple of straws for this table. Got to make eye contact with that guy because I haven't in a little while to see if he needs anything. Am I right? That's like you're going through your brain the whole time.
Yeah. And body language is telling you when you need to get over there quicker, right?
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Right.
So
Yeah. So, and you end up going on and studying computer science and then eventually into working for a company that produced the Yellow Pages. Now, for our younger listeners, we're going to have to define what the Yellow Pages was. I certainly remember it. I remember sitting on them. I remember like lots of Yellow Pages, and there are still some around. But you studied computer science, and then what brought you from computer science to the world of media?
Yeah, so it is funny. First, I want to say I remember not having a car seat, but sitting on a Yellow Page book. I think as
Totally safe.
But so I actually, I was doing an internship in my computer science course, and it was at a local business called Cares Tech. We did hardware and then also programming. And the woman that owned it, her name was Pam, which I think it was awesome that I had this experience with a woman-owned tech company at the time. She was really into kind of brain types and superpowers and strengths. And she taught me a lot, first of all. She offered me a job, but with the kind of caveat of, but Bobbie, I think that you could really do something more, suited to yourself. Though you can do this, I don't know if this is what you should be doing. So she was amazing and had really hard conversations with me about all the options that I had. One of the first people to really explain to me how brain types work and how to really leverage that. So I think that's really then what made me decide to go and start looking outside of the computer science field. So,
what was it, do you think she saw in you that made her think that you had some kind of bigger potential? And did she know what that was, or was it just she felt that computer science wasn't the end all be all for you?
Yeah, she really saw me working with people, and she couldn't see me sitting behind a computer
programming all day long.
Yeah, programming. And so she just really pointed that out, and in a very gracious way, but it made a lot of sense to me. And I had all this excitement around the bigness of, what things could be. And so really the creation that we talked a lot about. Yeah.
So you end up going to Dex Media, which was published the Yellow Pages at the time. And what were your roles there?
Yeah, so I'll just first point out that at the time that I got that job, that was a big deal. It was hard to get into Dex Media. So it was a little bit of nepotism, if I'm being honest. A woman was gracious enough to kind of put my name in a hat for interviews. I got hired in what's called prospect role. And so the prospect role, I would just really call people, and it was cold calling all day long. So I started out at the very bottom role, and I would call like 70 people a day. Again, that like tenacity that I had when getting that restaurant job when I was 15 was coming out in that role. So I grew from the prospector role to then what was called premise sales rep, which was the largest advertisers that they held in the phone book and digital marketing services that they offered.
The largest, so like we're talking like companies that are spending tens of thousands of dollars a month on their Yellow Pages ad, right?
Yeah. I would have clients that were spending $60,000 a month in Yellow Page advertising, believe it or not. And it seems unreal, but it's really one of the only mediums back then that people knew where to really focus on directional marketing.
Right. And this is not that long ago, because you founded M Agency in 2009. And so even as late as 2008, 2009, companies are still spending. I mean, probably today there are companies that spend that amount of money on the Yellow Pages.
Yeah. I think the Yellow Pages have changed quite a bit. They used to be pretty thick, right? When I was working there. Now, when I get a Yellow Page, and which I don't actually get one anymore because I think I opted out, but people will tease me occasionally and send me pictures of them, and they're, maybe a couple hundred. Just teeny.
They used to be super thick.
Yeah. So, but I am sure people are still spending good money, but at that time, a huge amount of money's in a dying medium is what was happening. So therefore, just struggling organization that I was working for, going through a ton of changes. So you saw
kind of the handwriting on the wall. You saw that the future was not in the Yellow Pages. It was in digital. And so you have your first child and you start thinking about what your next step is. At that point, is that when you decided I'm going to start my own agency?
Yeah, so I being like at that transitional point and the culture getting so bad in corporate America and really seeing that transition, there was great people at this business, Dex Media, there was great humans that work there, but it now became just kind of a terrible work environment. And that really motivated me to take advantage of the clients that continually asked me to help support them in the transition from print advertising to online advertising, and help them navigate what those buys look like. How do they have a diverse exposure? Because they went from, one place to advertise, or maybe a few because there was some competitive yellow books, but now hundreds of places that they could be spending this budget, and how do they really optimize and have a return on investment? So initially, I went out really just thinking that I would support on contract for transition.
Was that a steep learning curve at the same time for you because you'd been selling Yellow Pages? Did you have to learn all these different mediums?
Well, that's the one thing about going to an organization such as Dex Media. We had extensive training on how to support businesses. So I was actually really lucky to go through that and kind of understand how to really identify where the business is at and what kind of marketing support they need, within the limits of the products. So it felt really natural because at the same time, digital online exposure was limited. So there was, it's not like today. There was Google pay-per-click, some of the internet yellow page online directories, and then DSP wasn't where it is today. So it felt straightforward to me. I felt like I'd been trying to sell Dex's products because they were in the digital arena, just not super proud of what they were offering. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. So walk me through now, with the work that you do now. You do brand identity, advertising design, digital and print media. Did it eventually evolve into kind of this full service agency? How did that come about?
Yeah, so started out just like I said, thinking about consulting, then quickly realized that in my marketplace, there was no full service agency. We had kind of the well-known brand agency, we had PR, we had a dev shop, but nobody really looking at the entire picture for organizations and businesses. So at that point, that's when I decided to start building websites. I started contracting out my first web developer. I somewhat understood brands, not at the level I do today. It took me about 5 years in business to really kind of go through the training and have the experience with businesses and their brand level to know that I needed to get more focused on brands. So I was pretty tactical for the first 5 years. And then in 2015, started to become more focused on brand identity, building brand archetypes. And now really everything is rooted in brand at M Agency. So, I like to look at kind of the brand story strategy language and really bring through all of it. And that is what we're doing here at M.
Which is a perfect segue into another topic, perhaps my favorite topic, which is beer. You have a beer distributor that you worked with. This is the largest import beer distributor in the U.S., but they came to you. They had an incredibly antiquated website, needed an updated web presence, but also wanted to honor that history that they had. So walk me through what you did for them.
Yeah, so here we have some of the sexiest beers, if you will, on the market that is being represented. Merchant Divin is our client, being represented by their really old, kind of probably 11-year-old website at the point that they approached M Agency.
That's geriatric.
Yeah. So just imagine old HTML website, not functioning, on mobile devices.
Little flashing things all over the place, probably.
Yeah. They were trying to use flashing things, and there was lots of PDFs everywhere on their website. So Their marketing director was just really clear and knew that it was way overdue. So we had the opportunity to take their old site and bring it forward into one of the, I think, best projects we have in our portfolio right now. We completed this project in late 2021. Just a beautiful representation of our work and how we can bring products to life online. So it's a directory as well, so that you can find all of their import beers in your local market or local pub. So just a fun example of how M will bring brands forward.
Walk me through the types of questions that you would ask when a client like that comes to you, where you want their brand story to come through. What is this? If I'm like that type of customer, what types of questions do you ask me?
Yeah, so we're really first starting with trying to understand who the businesses are and like the why behind that business, because really understanding the essence of that business and what they're after will really help us start to articulate their voice, what their visual assets will look like. So we have a very thorough onboarding process that we go through, a lot of different kind of creative ways to extract their personality, right? What's your favorite animal might be a question. I'm joking, but really just—
If you were an animal, what? Yeah.
So I the questions vary just based on the industry. We do work with a broad range of industry. We interview all the key stakeholders, as any good kind of research would be done, just really understanding who they are. So
now, being a mom is not easy. Being a mom and starting a new business is hard. What was that like?
Yeah, I think I'm kind of crazy because it's a lot, but I'm married to a firefighter, which has a little bit more of a flexible schedule. So I was well supported at home, but still it's a lot, right? And so just really, I think the word or the idea of balance is bullshit. I think it's all about flow and immersion in our life. So I've really tried to integrate into my community as, both a mom and businesswoman, and have great support from really approaching it that way.
That's a great title for your next book, Balance is Bullshit. I want to ask you also about, you started a collective giving group in your area. It's called the South Sound 100 Women. I think you're rebranding it now. But talk a little bit about the impact that that's had on your business.
Yeah, so I was one of 3 other founders in South Sound 100 Women. M Agency has been the support for all of kind of the website and the design assets. So really, really involved in creating this organization. And I think the impact that it's had, it's what you always hear: when you give, then you receive. Like, really just the amount of support given to M through this community and through this group of now not just women. So we're in the rebrand stage, as you mentioned. We're going to be South Sound Giving, not South Sound 100 Women. So we have men and women and non-binary, but really the support that I have received and M has received, I feel like, is a direct reflection of being a part of supporting our community. Really, really awesome projects have come out of some of the connections that I've made there. And it's just so beautiful how you aren't there to talk about what you do for a living. You're not there to do anything but to learn about organizations impacting your community. But these really deep relationships from powerful people, because really powerful people are contributing to their community, and those are the types of events they're also attending. So it's been an excellent space for me, and I've learned so much through it. So
I want to ask you about the evolution that you went through personally as you grew this business, as the team got larger, and I've experienced this as well in our own personal business, where you as a leader have to kind of step up and you have to change your leadership style. So talk a little bit about what that demanded of you and kind of how you evolved over the years as a leader.
Yeah, absolutely. So I feel like it's happened many times in the business where I've had to continue to evolve as I grow. But I would say the most recent experience was really recognizing that being in servant leadership as the selected choice of leadership that I had kind of identified with was no longer working with the size of business that my business was turning into. So really identifying and getting more curious and learning about, coaching style leadership. So I'm a strength-based organization. I have business coach that also meets with all of my team regularly. So they have a lot of support. It's always been in kind of that servant mindset. But then what was happening within the kind of the growth is things continually got attached to me wanting to support the team, right? And so not only me, but my entire leadership group really identified like it was going to be the glass ceiling of the organization. So really naming, and I really recommend any leader to name the type of, management leadership style they've selected and understand whether or not it's fitting the organization at the organization's size that it is currently. Because sometimes you just outgrow that.
That's really fascinating to name the leadership style that you want to lead the organization by, and to share that, I assume, with your team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So my entire leadership team has named their leadership style and how they want to show up for their team. And what it does is it gives us accountability and gives us the ability to be disciplined in that, so that we know the way we're behaving within the organization is on point with kind of our ideal way of showing up. So it's helped us really anchor the culture here at M, really.
And what would you say to an agency owner that's listening to this, or an entrepreneur, a founder that's listening to this, that's interested with that idea? What would you recommend for them in order to think through that principle, or any resources or books or anything like that?
Yeah, so I have so many books that I could recommend, but I think that honestly. The best way to identify it for me was kind of going through and really thinking through and outlining the type of outcome that I wanted from my type of leadership. If you have a militaristic environment, it's going to be a very top down, and some people are very conscious of that's the type of organization they want to run. Servant leadership to me was really when problems come up, like get involved and really help overcome it. If you're at a spot in your business where you're trying to scale, getting involved in everything isn't going to support scaling, right? So that's where, for me, the coaching leadership style is, trying to pass the baton, if you will. I ultimately have done lots of different classes around this and just gone through a lot of discovery for my agency.
Yeah. We're almost out of time. So I want to ask you my gratitude question, which is I'm a big fan of expressing gratitude, especially publicly, and especially to your peers and contemporaries, maybe mentors who's helped you along the way. So who would you want to just call out and thank them publicly for helping you in your journey?
Yeah. So I would say I have so much gratitude for so many people, but if I was to really name someone, Josh Dunn, he is the owner of South Sound Magazine, 425 Magazine, which is a large publication here in Washington. I subleased when I first opened my business from him. I've worked with him on many different levels, and he's about 10 years my senior in owning a business. He also came from the print media side of things, so we have that language in common. But why I would say I'm most grateful for him is his willingness to be really honest with me and talk to me about, the way it feels on the receiving end as a customer, as, me as a tenant. Like, he's always just been so honest, and my personality just really appreciates that. I grow from that. We live in Washington. There's a lot of passive communication happening here. So really just direct transparency is what I appreciate most about him. Plus, he's just such a thought leader and doing such great work. And it's really been a gift to be able to watch him do that and have him share how he's come about that. So
it is a whole nother topic, but I think businesses that have come from the print world that have evolved and that have gone digital and created different assets and oftentimes created different ways of kind of monetizing their business, from events to maybe, different channels, different mediums. I think that those are truly fascinating. It's required a lot of innovation in those types of businesses over the last and reinvention over the last 10 years. And I think that's it's a fascinating area.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is interesting. And there's so much that they're doing just to stay relevant and pivoting, that word pivoting.
Right.
So
exactly.
It's just constant.
Yeah. Bobbie, this has been great. Where can people go to learn more about you and M Agency?
Yeah. So please go to my website at whatisyourm.com and also follow me at Shining BB Light on Instagram.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Smart Business Revolution podcast with John Corcoran. Find out more at smartbusinessrevolution.com. And while you're there, sign up for our email list and join the revolution. Revolution. And be listening for the next episode of the Smart Business Revolution podcast.